kind of do a introduction to Inkstitch using the lettering tool, which is the most simple and basic way to stitch out objects on your embroidery machine using Inkstitch. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is make sure that you have the most current version of Inkscape running on your computer. And you can download Inkscape from the inkscape.org website. And if you select download now, you can see that there is a Linux, Windows, or Mac version that you can download. And you can follow those instructions on how to download. Make sure you have the correct version for your computer. And once you have installed that and opened it and it's running correctly, then you can download the Inkstitch Extension by going to inkstitch.org and pressing this download. And this also works on either a Mac or a PC. So once you have installed that, then you're going to go ahead and open Inkscape. When you first open Inkscape, it shows you this quick setup menu, and you're going to make sure you have your canvas set to default. And I like my keyboard set to Adobe Illustrator. So when I mention keyboard shortcuts, just remember that I am using this Adobe Illustrator keyboard. I like the appearance set to colorful, and I like this dark mode set. From there, you want to go to time to draw, and you can see you have, this is where you can open your most recent files. You can go to print and find various common print sizes like US letter or A4. And you can also find your custom templates that you have created here. You can see I have created different templates for a 100 by 100 hoop or 300 by 200 hoop. I also like this 10 by 10 inch for creating patterns. So it's up to you what size templates you want to make, and I'll show you how to do that. So by default, Inkscape opens to this A4 size. And you also will probably not see your grid. So you will not see a grid there. It will just be a plain blank page. So in order to get this to open to our template size every time we hit new document, you're going to want to go to File and Document Properties. And from here, you already have millimeters selected under A4, but if not, change that to millimeter. And you can set this to 100 by 100. And I like my page set to white, my border set to black, and my desk set to this medium gray, and you can change that by clicking on it. Additionally, I like to come over here and set my grids. So when you first open this, you won't see any grids being applied. So you'll need to select rectangular. Make sure your grid units are set to millimeter. I like my minor grid lines to be kind of a light gray color so that I only see them when I zoom in. I like my major grid line to be this blue color, and I want major grid lines every 10 millimeters so that I have basically centimeters shown on here. And you can close your document properties, and then let me show you some zooming techniques. So if you ever lose your document location, which you can easily do on a Mac with using a magic mouse by accidentally scrolling and swiping. So you can press 5 and that will fit your canvas to the screen. Or you can press 1 and that'll be a 1-to-1 ratio. Additionally, if you have anything on your canvas, you can select it and press 3 and it'll zoom into your selection. So I'm going to zoom back out to 5. I'm going to delete that. Anything you have on your canvas when you save it as a template will always show up whenever you open your template. So make sure there's nothing on your canvas. So we want to go to Save Template. And from here, you can name your template whatever you like, 100 by 100 millimeter hoop, for example. You can add your name as an author, a description, and keywords if you'd like. And if you want this document to open every time you hit New Document, you would select Set as Default Template. So let's select that and hit Save. I already have a file that has that name, so I just want to select Replace. Okay, so where are you going to find all of your Inkstitch properties? You're going to find those under Extensions, Inkstitch, and here's all of your options that you're going to use to be able to use Inkstitch as a digitizing software. So you're going to want to keep in mind a couple of shortcuts. Here on a Mac, params, I have set to Command-Shift-P. That is automatically set to that on a Mac. However, on a PC, Command-Shift-P stands for Preferences. So you're going to have to change that. Additionally, you'll want to keep in mind the shortcut for the simulator, which is Command-Shift-L. And the stitch plan preview is actually Command-Shift greater than, which I often refer to as the right arrow. So in order to find where Inkstitch has all of their recommended shortcuts, you can go to User Manual and go to Customize on the Inkstitch website. And you can download and import their custom shortcut keys from here if you'd like. Or you can just use this as a reference. Now I'm going to show you how to add these shortcuts yourself. To add these shortcuts yourself, you're going to go up to Inkscape and Settings. From here, you're going to go under Interface, you're going to go to Keyboard. Under Keyboard, you can see I have my Adobe Illustrator keyboard shortcuts set here. But in order to find exactly what you're looking for, it's best to search for that. Because you can see there's quite an extensive list here. So I'm going to search on params. And from here you can see under extensions I have params listed. In order to change that, you're going to double click on it. And then you're going to hit Command-Shift-P or whatever you want your shortcut to be. And that's how you set shortcuts for Inkstitch and Inkscape. So now I'm going to show you how to set some very important settings when you're using Inkstitch. So you're going to want to go to Inkscape and go to your settings. And you're going to go to Tools and Node Tool. So you're going to select that drop down and go to Node Tool. And you want to make sure that you have Show Path Direction on Outlines selected. And you also want to make sure that you have Always Show Outline selected. It's going to default to red, and I'm just going to leave it as red. And we're going to need that for the following lesson where we create our own lettering. And that's how you want to set your preferences for Inkstitch within Inkscape. The first thing I want to show you is how Inkstitch handles Inkscape's fonts that are within the interface here. So in order to do that, we're going to come over here to our left sidebar menu and select the text tool, which is this A symbol with a cursor next to it. And then we're going to select anywhere on our canvas, and we're going to type the word free in all caps. And I have that set to a green fill with no stroke. So in order to set your fill and stroke, left clicking changes the fill. You can see the fill changing down here. You can see the colors of my letters changing as I select different colors. Shift click changes the outline. So, and then this stroke width right here you can change by right clicking and selecting a different width if you'd like. And if you want to remove the stroke, you're going to shift click on the X. Then I'm going to come up here to the selector tool, which is the first menu item. And I'm going to just drag this to the upper left. And then I'm going to resize it using that arrow key from the corner so that it is mostly filling my width of my canvas. Now, if I were to select that and go to Extensions, Inkstitch, Params, it's going to take a minute to think. Give me an error that says Inkstitch doesn't know how to work with any of the objects you've selected. And that's because this is still lettering. So this is a text object and not just a regular SVG object. So let's click the X. Before we turn this lettering into an SVG object so that Inkstitch can stitch it out, you want to change your font or make any text changes that you want before you convert it. Otherwise, it will no longer be a text object and you can no longer edit it. In order to change the font, you want to come over here to this drop-down dialog box and select Text and Font. And this is the default menu that opens up for working with text. Yours might look different if you have changed your settings. But from here, you want to select your font that you'd like. And I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to select a font that I know I like that is called Rockwell. Additionally, you can change the style. I'm just going to leave it as normal, but you could change it to italic or bold if you wanted to. And you can also change the size of the font here within your preview, but it will also change the font on your canvas. I might change it to 72. It's a little smaller there. So now that I have my font looking the way that I want it to look, I'm going to go up to Path and Object to Path. Because if you have it selected right now and you try to go to the node tool, you can see that it won't show you any transformation tools or anything other than making it larger or smaller. And that is just like where your cursor is, that blue dot there. So what you want to do to be able to stitch this out is hit Path, Object to Path. Command-Shift-C is a very important tool to know. Additionally, you can select your object with the node tool, and you can press this button here, Object to Path. And then automatically you can see that you have your nodes. Additionally, you can see what direction each of these paths are going, which becomes important whenever we start creating our own satin stitches. But for now, this is just a regular fill object. So let's go Command-Shift-P. And you can see that Inkstitch just sees that as a fill object, a filled shape. If I select my jump stitches, you can see that there's a tiny little jump stitch in between the letters, which it doesn't look too bad. However, if you wanted to get rid of those, you would normally be able to hit trim after, and it would trim after each letter. But it's not going to do that because this is still a combined object. So it sees this as one shape, even though there's separations between our shapes. So let's cancel that. And let's select that. And under Path, these two shortcuts are also very important. Combine is Command K, and break apart is Command-Shift-K. So we're going to break these apart by going Command-Shift-K. You can see that we lost our empty space in the middle of our R. In order to get that back, we're going to select both shapes. And you can shift-click on the F to deselect it. And we're going to combine those by going Command-K. And now we have our empty space in the middle of our R again. And then when we select all of them and hit Command-Shift-P, we view our jump stitches. Now we have a little bit different thing going on because the R is beginning in a different place. So we have a long jump stitch and another long jump stitch. So we want to trim those. Now that these are separate objects, you can hit trim after. And now our machine will trim after each letter. And you want to hit apply and quit if you want to accept those parameters. So that's how you can create a fill stitch using the fonts within the text editor in Inkscape. Although they probably would look better as satin stitches. We're just going to leave them as regular fill stitches, and we're going to select them all. We're going to kind of move them over. And you're going to want to look over here in your layers, and you can see that you have 4 objects. So in order to keep these together, we're going to group them by hitting Command G. So now we have those in a folder, and they will stay together whenever we select them or resize them. Now we're going to use the lettering options that are available within Inkstitch. You can access that by going to Extensions, Inkstitch, Lettering. Once you get this up, you can select in this text area and type the word that you're going to want to stitch out. I'm going to type the word embroidery. So within here, you have a list of all your fonts and a little preview. If you don't want to see all the fonts, you can select just the applique fonts, cross stitch, display fonts, tiny fonts, running stitch font, or multicolor. I'm just going to scroll down here until I find the font that I want, which is this lobster font. When you select that font, you can see that there's some information here about it. So it can be scaled down to 80% or up to 150. So if you select on this eye, you can see what size it's going to be. It's 118. That's a little too big for our hoop. So I'm going to change the scale down to 80%. It's the smallest it will go. Then I'm going to select the info again, and you can see it's 95 millimeters now. And that will now fit. There are 5 jumps, 0 trims. So we're just going to leave it like that. You can see where the jump stitches are, and they're pretty minimal. So I'm going to hit apply and quit. So where is our stitching? This is when you want to press the 1 button to zoom out to size, and you can see it always puts it up here off of your canvas. And that is so you can select it and place it where you want it to be. I'm just going to put it here kind of in the center of our canvas. If you want to align this to your canvas, you need to pull up the alignment tools. You can find those in this drop-down menu here under Align and Distribute. Right now, the alignment is relative to the page. So you can select your object and center it on the vertical axis. You want to make sure your objects are grouped, otherwise they will stack on top of each other. We're going to go back to Extensions, Inkstitch, Lettering. And because we have embroidery selected, it's going to revert back to showing us our options for that word. So make sure you deselect that. And then we're going to go back up to Inkstitch Lettering. Then we're going to select our text box and we're going to type the word software. And we're going to just select running stitch so we only view our running stitch options. And I'm going to select this one here called Sacramarif. And I'm going to look at my sizing available, and I'm going to go to Info, and I'm going to make this the maximum size this time, which is 150. Now when I go to Info, it says it's 95 millimeters, so that will work. I'm going to hit Apply and Quit. It places it up here, and you can see that in order to get a running stitch, you can use a dash line to kind of mimic that running stitch. So I'm going to again center that to the page and put it below the word embroidery. If I wanted to move this up or down, directly up or down, I would want to hold the Control key, and that moves it exactly up or down. That way it keeps it centering. And the reason why I have this somewhat pushed over to the left is because I'm going to show you how to put a glyph here. So let's go ahead and go to our Inkstitch website, and we're gonna go to fonts. And here it's going to show us information about all of our fonts. And if you select different fonts, you can see that it will show you your glyphs that are available. I'm going to use TT Masters because I know that it has a $sign glyph that I can use. So let's go Command-Shift-Q to bring up our lettering options. Type in our text box, Shift 4, and you can see this default font does not have a glyph, so it's just stitching out a square. You may sometimes see nothing if that glyph is not available. We're going to scroll down here to TT Masters, and there we see our glyph. Let's look at what size it is. It's 13 by 26 at 100%. So we're just going to leave it as is and hit apply and quit. It's going to put our glyph up here, and we can drag that and place that next to the word free. Additionally, if you want to move an object, you can use your arrow keys, and if you just want to move it a tiny bit, you can use your Option key while you arrow over. So that becomes important when you're doing fine detail work. I'm going to change some of the colors of these. You can see if I select fill, it tries to fill these weird shapes. So make sure you hold Shift and change the color. The only one you want to leave as a fill is this word free. But even this weird shape, we want to leave as an outline so that Inkstitch can read that as a satin stitch. Now we're going to select off, and we're going to look at our whole design. We're going to go Command-Shift-P because I want to show you something that happens in Inkstitch. There it's showing us the word free and embroidery, and it's showing us our glyph, but it's not showing us our running stitch, our software. That is because it automatically hides some of your running stitches that may be included in the design to get from one point to the other. If you want to see everything, then you want to go to Extension, Inkstitch, Visualize and Export, Simulator, which is Command-Shift-L. So I'll often do this as a final overview of what it looks like, sort of as a final review. And this will show me my running stitch. And I think that that looks very light compared to how strong these look. So I actually am going to come in, and if I just select the software and do Command-Shift-P, if you just select a running stitch by itself, it will show you what that looks like. And I'm going to actually change this to a bean stitch by pressing 1. So one bean stitch is actually 3 passes. because it goes forward, backward, forward at each stitch. So you can see the number of stitches going up right here whenever I change that. Let's go back to 0. And it should be 3 times that amount just by hitting 1 bean stitch. If you do 2, then it will go up to 5 passes on each stitch. So that's just one way to make your line thicker and a little bolder. So I'm going to hit apply and quit. And then if you want to see what this looks like as a realistic view, you're going to select off somewhere so that it does your stitch plan preview for your whole design. And I'm going to go to Extensions, Inkstitch, Visualize and Export, Stitch Plan Preview. The shortcut for this is Command-Shift greater than, which I often refer to as right arrow. You can see it brings up some options. You can move the stitch plan beside your object. You can show needle points. You can lock that layer. You can display the command symbols. You can render jump stitches, which I always like to do. You can add an ignore layer command. This means when it's showing you your realistic preview, if you accidentally select that and hit and go to params, it will ignore that layer. And you can override the last stitch plan. If you're doing this over and over again, you want to select that so that you can override the previous error to see what the effects of your changes that you made. You can select live preview to see what it's going to look like. I usually have my design layer visibility set to unchanged, and I like the render mode to be realistic, high quality. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit apply. Let's close that. And now you can see that's what it looks like. It's just one image, and it is a bitmap. It's a raster image. And you can see that I have these jump stitches here in my embroidery lettering. If I want to remove that, I can delete that, select that, and go to Command-Shift-P. Instead of going to my lettering tool, I'm going to parameters. And then I'm going to scroll down here, trim after. And now when I display my jump stitches, you can see that it's gone. Apply and quit. Command-Shift greater than or right arrow. And there it is. It corrected that. You can see it just did my stitch plan preview on the embroidery word because that's all I had selected. So now I'm going to select off of it. And remember, it's going to override that previous stitch plan preview. And then it shows me what that looks like now with my trims in place. I like to drag it over to the dark gray screen. Often I will hide my page grid as well so I can see what that looks like. Thing I want to show you is how to export this to be able to stitch it out on your embroidery machine. And the way that we do that is by coming up here and going to File, Export. This automatically brings up your export dialog box. From here, you can select this drop-down menu and scroll down to the type of stitching file you would like to save it as. I have a brother, so I want PES. And I just want to put that on my desktop, and I'm going to hit export. Then I can move that file over to my machine and stitch it out, and we'll do that next. Let me just show you also how you can get this thread palette here. If I hover over, you can see that it has the number and the name. And this is the Brother embroidery color palette, which is just the very simple one that is the same. That is what I have on my machine. If you want to be able to access different color palettes though, you want to go to Extensions, Inkstitch, Thread Color Management, Install Thread Color Palettes for Inkscape. You can also create your own custom palette. But for now, we're just going to install these thread color palettes. And once you have installed those, you can come over to this bottom right hand menu, and you can see that you have all these different color palettes that are common to embroidery. So if you use Isacord or if you use Madeira, you can access those color palettes here. However, I do like to keep this very basic color palette. I don't like to have too many colors that are similar. Otherwise, I will select what I think is the same color, and as I'm creating my design, I might select a different color that is similar and think it's the same color. And then whenever my machine goes to stitch it out, it will keep asking me to change colors when I don't need to. So this just helps me to limit my colors. I usually try to stay at 6 colors. I don't like creating super complicated designs that have, over 20 colors, but I will occasionally do, 12, 15 colors, and I don't want to confuse them because ultimately I want to limit color changes in my machine.